And of course, that fear of assassination, as you point out, is well founded. He was nearly killed in Butler, Pennsylvania, in July of 2024, and then 2 months later, there was another attempt, a potential assassin arrested, who was hiding in the shrubbery outside of Mar-a-Lago in West Palm Beach. So Trump was already primed for this since there had been two close calls. You write, the FBI manufactured a series of assassination plots, successfully convincing Trump that Iran was hunting him on U.S. soil with highly sophisticated teams of hitmen. Can you give us the details and I guess begin by talking about Asaf
Merchant.
Merchant?
Yeah.
Merchant.
Yeah. And so anyone who watched your intro will hear you quote Donald Trump stating, "I got him before he got me," referring to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's not really in Iran's doctrine to assassinate a foreign leader and risk war. They would easily get the U.S. it would easily trigger the U.S. to attack them. But this is what Trump believes. So why does he believe it? Who convinced him? And what do we know? Well, the first thing to know is that, as you said, Donald Trump's fears of assassination are well-founded. And the main assassination attempt, which nearly claimed Donald Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, 2024, is not well understood and still shrouded in mystery. And it's especially not well understood by people on the left because, what do they care? The right is much more invested in this and trying to get to the truth. And right-wing members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, have gone as far as going to Butler to try to get to the bottom of it. One of them, Clay Higgins, went to Butler, I think 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, and he found that the body of Thomas Matthew Crooks, the would-be assassin who missed Trump, supposedly sliced his ear and missed his head by like an inch, his body had been destroyed. It had actually been returned to his family. There was no toxicology report that he could access. We later learned the toxicology report was faulty. But there are so many instances of obstruction around Crooks. Christopher Wray, the FBI director at the time, said that Crooks had no social media history and was just this kind of mysterious lone wolf. It turned out he had an extensive social media history. On YouTube, for example, he was a prolific commenter declaring his intention to wage civil war ignite a civil war by killing political leaders in the U.S. He explicitly called for the assassination of Ilhan Omar in one comment on YouTube. Other YouTube users were flagging his comments, but nothing ever happened to him that we know of. So there are real questions within what once was Donald Trump's support base, which is now kind of like collapsing, about whether Thomas Matthew Crooks himself had been recruited by the FBI at some point, and that Trump's assassination was a manufactured plot gone wrong. And it's going to get even eerier when we start to understand the details of this figure, Asaf Merchant, who is, you pronounce his name Merchant. I mean, that might be how it's pronounced. I think it's Merchant. It's spelled Merchant. He's from Pakistan, and he entered the United States through Houston to visit family. He had an Iranian wife, and he had met in Iran on a pilgrimage in Karbala. And this wound him up on a terrorist watch list, a DHS watch list, when he entered, George H.W. Bush Airport in Houston, I think in February of 2024. However, DHS waves him through, or Customs and Border Patrol waves him through after discovering his whole history of having family in Iran on his phone, seeing the watch list, and they give him a special, I don't know if you can call it a special visa, but it's a kind of visa that enables law enforcement investigation. And they basically, decided to target him and manipulate him. The question is, were the Israelis alerting them in advance that he was coming? Had the Israelis wound him up on the watch list? And was this a kind of operation conducted in tandem with the Israelis? Merchant enters the country. He's a small-time businessman. He's trying to meet business partners. A man approaches him and says, I want to help you sell shirts and get into the garment industry here. That man is an FBI informant who is a former translator for the U.S. Army in Afghanistan. We don't know his real name. And he winds up filming Merchant in a hotel room, declaring his intention to carry out an assassination of unnamed political leadership using a 25-person protest as a distraction, with a woman who's handling reconnaissance and a sniper. This is a guy who has no military history, no experience with any of this. And then he's told by the informant, okay, I'll get all these people. All we need is $5,000. So like $5,000 for like this giant flash mob style assassination extravaganza is absurd. And it turns out Merchant didn't even have $5,000 to his name. So the FBI informant leads him up and down the East Coast to meet various individuals who are all FBI informants to collect the money. And then he takes them, to say, okay, we're going to do this. Merchant goes home to Houston. He's arrested on guess what date? June 12th, 24 hours before the Butler assassination attempt, raising serious questions. So then after Butler, Merchant is visited in his cell by a team of FBI agents who want to know if he had anything to do with the attempt to kill Trump and Butler. They determined that he hadn't. He had no idea about it, but it raises further questions. And as one of them later told the Washington Post, if we had demonstrated that this Merchant guy had been sent by the IRGC, it would have meant war. They would have had to have attacked Iran.
And I just want to stop you there, Max, because as you know very well, immediately after 9/11, this was kind of the modus operandi of the FBI, where they would find these dead enders and essentially suggest particular plots and supply them with the money and the material to do it. I think in something like 90% of these cases where they had supposedly uncovered terrorist cells, exactly like this, they were essentially created by the FBI.
Completely. Trevor Aronson, the researcher, in his book, The Terror Factory, found that something like over 90% of terror busts during the Obama era by the FBI were manufactured plots. And the FBI agent who oversaw the Merchant case, this is a detail that might be a little bit hazy for me. He's the same FBI agent who oversaw the Detroit field office that spun out the phony Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, where Americans were told that these right-wing militiamen had plotted to kidnap the Democratic governor of Gretchen Whitmer. Turns out it was a controlled plot by the FBI. None of the defendants conceived the plot. The plot was completely conceived by paid FBI informants, but they were all convicted anyway. And when did we learn about this horrifying right-wing terror plot? In October of 2020. It was kind of like the October surprise that they dropped in order to further implicate Donald Trump as an extremist. And, I'm no fan of Trump, but it was pretty clearly a political ruse. So the same guy was involved. He was found in contempt of Congress, I believe, for lying about evidence. The FBI from throughout this entire saga has proven itself to be one of the most corrupt institutions in American society and one of the most dangerous. So we go back.
We should also mention that there was another FBI manufactured plot to supposedly kill John Bolton.
Yes. This was another plot that involved confidential informants and never amounted to anything. It, even mainstream press concluded that there was never any point when the dupe who was supposedly going to assassinate Bolton, there was never any point when Bolton's life was in danger. And Mike Pompeo subsequently claimed that he was targeted by the same IRGC-run assassination network, but there's nothing even in FBI or DOJ documents indicating that Pompeo was a target. It's just something Pompeo runs around and says constantly in order to implicate Iran. So the IRGC operative who supposedly oversaw those plots is named Moghadam. This was the guy that whose assassination Pete Hegseth announced on like day 3 of the war on Iran. And how did Pete Hegseth know that Moghadam had supposedly been killed? The Israelis told him that they killed him. And so Hegseth was thanking the Israelis for taking out the IRGC operative who he believed had overseen all of these plots against Donald Trump. Except they're not even said to involve Donald Trump. It supposedly involved John Bolton. What's more, this would be like assassinating, I don't know, Pete Hegseth because some American guy was in another country and killed somebody. I mean, Moghadam, whoever he is so far up the food chain, it's very doubtful that he had any command and control over this supposed assassination. So in every case, there are either confidential informants or paid or witnesses who appear to have been confidential informants but aren't named as such. And there never was a case in which any individual who's accused of being instrumentalized by Iran to take out Donald Trump ever came anywhere close. Asaf Merchant said, I didn't even want to do it. I felt like I was being manipulated and pressured, and I thought I had to do it or my family back in Iran would be harmed. But he said there's no way I was ever going to succeed. But then there were imaginary plots that were conceived as well. I mean, we're just talking about the manufactured ones. The most serious of these was when Donald Trump was told that there were IRGC operatives or IRGC trained operatives in the United States who had shoulder-mounted like man pads that could take out Trump Force One. And this prompted Donald Trump to take decoy flights during the campaign on the private jet of his real estate buddy, Steve Witkoff. Where did the FBI and I guess this came from the FBI. Where did they get that from? It looks like they pulled it from the indictment of Ryan Roth, who was the second guy who attempted to assassinate Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago in September 2024. He was the mentally troubled drifter who was seen pointing an SK assault rifle toward the golf course that Donald Trump was playing on, with Steve Witkoff, by the way. And he was pursued and caught by Secret Service agents. It turned out he has his own shady history. He was attempting to recruit internationals to fight in Ukraine, including Mujahideen from Afghanistan and including Iranians. And he had said, probably this was all bluster, but he had told some Iranian he was trying to recruit that he would give him like a shoulder-mounted anti-aircraft. He would give him like a rocket launcher. So it looks like the FBI just finessed the Roth indictment into an imaginary threat against Donald Trump to keep him afraid of Iran on the campaign trail. But going back to the supposed Israeli assassination of Moghadam, the New York Times reported last week that they probably didn't even kill this figure. I mean, this all came from Israeli intelligence. So this is the first time mainstream media has acknowledged that Israeli intelligence was behind the information that Donald Trump received that Iran was trying to kill him. So it raises questions about the Israeli intelligence role in Asaf Merchant's case, about the Israeli intelligence role in convincing John Bolton that he was targeted, Mike Pompeo, and the phony plot to take down Trump Force One. And then finally, Benjamin Netanyahu, after Israel launched an unprovoked assault on Iran in June 2025, the 12-day war, Netanyahu wanted to guarantee that Donald Trump got involved and authorized U.S. military action because Israel was not doing very well at that point. Tel Aviv was getting hammered. Iran was retaliating after losing much of its IRGC command structure in a way I don't think Israel expected. So Netanyahu goes on prime time on Fox News, which is what Donald Trump constantly has on his TV, with Bret Baier, and he declares that Iran is behind 2 assassination plots, 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life. And Bret Baier was stunned. He said, wait, it was a completely scripted interview. And this was the only follow-up question. And he said, what are you talking about? Do you have intelligence on this? And Netanyahu then said, oh yeah, we have intelligence. But he was very careful to kind of cover up the fact that Israeli intelligence was manipulating Trump. And he said, we get this through proxies. So it was very clear that Israel was trying to convince Donald Trump that Iran was not only attempting to target him, but that they had sliced his ear with a bullet in Butler, PA, and that Thomas Crooks was somehow an IRGC operative, this lone American boy who apparently was friendless, had never left the country. And Donald Trump, by this point, believed it.
Do you think that was the primary motivation behind Trump's support of the war?
That's a great question. I think Trump has to answer for that. He's not being asked these kinds of questions. I don't know if he often deflects from questions with insults or amusing stories or just incoherent rhetoric. But when this war is over, it will have dealt such a blow to U.S. empire that there will be a lot to answer for. And I think his motives will come back into play. And I think there are motives that he's not able to address, such as his own personal fear of the Israelis. That Donald Trump wonders what would happen to him if he suddenly went off script after accepting so much money from this mafia-like coterie of billionaires, Adelson, Singer, Marcus, etc. What does Donald Trump think about Charlie Kirk's assassination? Like, who does he think did it? I know people around Trump have serious questions about that one as well. But watching Charlie Kirk get shot in the neck in the middle of a rally was probably not received well by Trump. He's not someone who wants to sacrifice his legacy. He's there to make as much money as possible. He's worried about his grandchildren and sons being targeted. His son, Eric Trump, actually stated on Fox News that he doesn't believe the official story around Charlie Kirk or around Butler, PA. So I think there's a fear factor as well. I don't think Donald Trump likes Benjamin Netanyahu.
I don't think anybody likes Benjamin Netanyahu.
I think he's afraid of him. I think he defers to him. And I think that Donald Trump is so feeble-minded and had so much hubris after Venezuela, the success he saw there, that he thought that he could achieve the trifecta of Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran in a few months and would be seen as this hero. And he was the subject of so much manipulation financially and psychologically that his brain had been rendered putty in the hands of the Israel lobby.